Appreciate it.
Doing what I can. All right. Good afternoon and welcome to the City Council Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, May 18th, 2023. We have two items on the agenda. The first item is discussion regarding the 2024 City of Norman budget. Mr. Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So where we are in the budget process now is, as you know, the city manager's budget has been presented to council in a series of study sessions. We have been receiving some proposed amendments to the budget from staff and from some individual council members. And what we want to talk about today is just, do you first want to forward those amendments to the full council in the meeting, I believe it's on June the 13th, when we consider the budget for full adoption. Get any questions that you have about these proposed amendments answered hopefully today. And then do you want to forward them? Because again, most of these have come from individual council members. And the individual council members' priorities may or may not be this committee's priority and may or may not be the full council's priority. So again, you can forward them out of this committee. Council would still have the final say when the budget is considered for adoption in June. But we just want to find out any questions that individual council members have about. I know Councilmember Peacock had a couple of these and he's not here, but we'll try to answer any questions that you have about his. But I think everybody else's that we have received individual council members' requests from you are here. So try to get your questions answered today and then just say yes or no, we'll forward them. You see also that there are a couple of them that are in the capital budget. And as you know, the capital budget is in a negative position for funding new requests. So we have basically asked you, do you want to find some other projects that you want to reduce to pay for those in the capital fund, or might you want to pay for them from the general fund or from some other source? So those are all questions that we try to want to get answered today. As you see, we are up to about 14 requests, 15, yeah, we got another one today. 15 requests for amendments so far. Not all of them have to go forward, but again, we will prepare final language for you at the consideration meeting with those that you do want to have come forward. So we'll just kind of go in order here where there are staff requests. Well, we'll have those staff members to talk about them. The first one is kind of from us. And as you know, we have just approved the general obligation bonds 2023A and 2023B, and this is just the levied property taxes. The revenue will be coming in from those property taxes, but we do need to get that into the budget to pay that debt service. The second one is the room tax that passed on last Tuesday. This is the estimated revenue from that rate increase, and this is just the increase. The city manager's budget had the base 5% revenues in there, so there doesn't need to be an amendment for that. But this is just the additional revenue by the formula that is in that 2023 room tax ordinance. This is how it would go: $51,000 to the administrative fee, $306,000 to the arts and humanities, and $918,000 to convention and visitors attraction. So any questions about that one? The next one is a administrative fee for the solar arrays that are at the water treatment plant and the wastewater reclamation plant. Totals $50,000. It's basically electricity that we did not anticipate that we were going to have that cost. Chris may have some blanks to fill in, but it's $50,000 total. about 2/3 to wastewater and about 1/3 to water. Any questions about that one?
Have to be, Bill.
The next one, I believe, came from Councilmember Grant. It is for a curb and gutter project that we've already talked about at the study sessions. Council had decided that you wanted to, instead of funding the full project, that you would come with just about $25,000 to do the design for that Reed Avenue curb and gutter project. And Public Works said that that'll cost about $25,000. As you see there in 4B, we're proposing that the money would come from a transfer from the 144th Avenue Northeast project and from the asphalt pavement maintenance program.
But that could also be a general fund thing?
It could be.
And we wouldn't have to say no to the 144th Avenue one.
Or is that an overage in the 144 North East?
It would essentially take that project away.
Oh, got it, okay.
We would leave what is remaining in there to cover some more extensive deep patching, cover deep patching on that road and everything else, but it would limit that project.
Limit the deep patching on 144th.
It would take away from the plan, the full extent of the plans on 144th. We would still be able to do some of the work. We wouldn't be able to do everything that we're proposing.
How many people live on 144th Street in that section?
That would be, I don't.
Not very many.
Well, I was gonna say, the general fund was one of those ones when you're running a surplus, you don't wanna have too much, like you should be serving the citizens. And we did start also talking to the people on that other side of the street, letting them know that we're talking about it and designing it. So if it's all right, I would like to get it from the general fund and let those people on 144th,
Keep all theirs.
yes,
Just council's preference.
I would agree.
yeah.
Okay. We will make that adjustment for
Can
final
I
adoption.
ask a question? How much, again, do we have in surplus in the general fund?
Approximately $17 million is what we're projecting, and remember, that's just a projection. Everything that you do chips away at that.
Sure.
The next one is a funding request that we got from the depot. Don't know if there's a representative or if Paul can help with this one.
I know that Sherry had approached us about, no, Ellen and I for sure, about expenses related to them hosting the Amtrak, or them being there and opening it and greeting it, and other services related to that program is what Sherry was.
That's correct. She's had the same amount budgeted for several years, and as anything is becoming more expensive to almost, the guy doesn't get paid that much that goes out there and does that, and pretty much a volunteer basis, but they also do offer services like light snacks and coffee and things as people roll through there, and as we know, it's becoming more and more too expensive to buy everything, but they do a heck of a job hosting, and usually hear zero qualms or problems that happen out there. They're very dependable.
That's that one guy that sits there at that little bed.
Yes.
And
It's
I,
easy.
I guess we also would just add, like, doing those one Normans. I think our group was talking about train service and,
Hope to have more train
oh yeah, also.
activity. Yeah.
And visit Norman and their strategic planning. Also, train service and bringing people here. So I really appreciate what they're doing at the depot.
Heck, yeah. Okay, I'm good with that.
The next is a request from the Norman Music Festival or the Norman Music Alliance. I believe this one came from Councilmember Holman. But it is just basically asking the city to cover their permitting costs for sanitation and street closure. And I think this would be a recurring request. Is that correct?
Potentially, Sherry had approached us about really the festival, as well as it comes off every year, really runs on a real shoestring budget, and really a small, relatively small group of people get it organized and put on every year. And I think most of us agree it does generate a lot of notoriety and activity for the city of Norman, and sales tax revenue, of course. And we thought it would be good if potentially the city made some contribution to the festival if they were interested. And $10,000 is what we thought would be a small, but
Why 10 instead of 5? Oh, I'm trying.
no particular
Okay.
reason. That's just, you know, and because it's all privately fundraised is the festival. It's all sponsors and private fundraisers, and the county was listed as a sponsor this year. I noticed I had to read them off, and I asked her, I was like, why is the county on here? Are they giving you a contribution? And they were letting them use, I think, the well and other county stuff was, so I don't know that it was a direct monetary donation, but in kind, I guess, contribution. So I thought it would be something for us to consider.
And just remember now that the Norman Arts Council's grant process, the Norman Music Alliance is one of their larger, so they get a lot of room tax money already. They get about $40,000 a year in room tax money.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think part of this conversation too with Norman Music Festival is because, like we did on Tuesday with the Beat Ball and the Corn Ferry Tour, they wanted to put in for one of those quality event incentives, but it didn't work out this year because of the way that the language is structured in that, and so they're working towards potentially being able to do that in future years. So when I talked to one of their board members about this, that this was kind of a gap to fill that hole, and so in future years they'll be able to request this money back through those incentives, and so we might not have to
May not be
put this
reoccurring.
might not be a recurring thing every year if they can qualify for one of those incentive packages, like some of the stuff that Visit Norman is bringing in.
Well,
as well.
and my thought is could we cut it down to 5,000 and limit it to 1 year and then just do it in next year? Would we still be,
I kind of view this as a one-time contribution. They could, way I explained it to Sherry was Norman Music Festival could go through our regular process that outside services and agencies request funding from the city for if they wanted to have a regular, like, budget line item.
yeah,
But that this was more intended to be a
Yeah.
direct, like, contribution from the city for this year's help covering some expenses.
yeah.
But potentially, but I think Sherry would be, I wish she was here, I should have reached out to her about this, that I think they would take any amount that we'd be willing. So 5,000 would help them, I'm sure.
Go ahead.
I don't know if your board member told you anything about this, but I was led to believe the 10,000 was about a shortfall in not only that, but just extra expenses, basically. And then I do know it costs a bit because they have to get police presence, and so, that's not cheap.
No.
So, so anyways, I was led to believe that was like really a funding gap, and 10 grand would cover the whole.
The gap, make them fall.
I guess they'd be paying us right back for the street closure and the police, or
Well, that was going
maybe
to
not
be
the,
my question: is how much did we charge them for those things as a city for them to be able to run?
We charge the normal street closure permit fee. I think sanitation is comped, right? I
Yeah,
think-
we asked for our cost to be recouped.
I know that they do pay for,
you said recoup?
Recoup.
Well,
not
I mean,
comp.
paid, we asked them to pay us for our services.
Yeah, and which is how much?
Enterprise funds, yeah.
Oh, I don't have the top of my head, but you get that.
Yeah, I think it'd be good before we decide to bump this down to 5,000. I'd like to see what those extra costs are, right? Like, and the increased cost of street closure, sanitation, the public safety, permitting, all of those things. I'd like to see what the full scope is that they're being asked to pay from the city.
I would just like to add, I've heard from other festivals that they were surprised by cost increases as well. Like they'd budgeted, but they just, and it's not even us. Sometimes it's insurance.
Oh, yeah, I heard insurance was
Electricity?
becoming an impactful line item for all the festivals. So, yeah, we can outline that quickly and get it to everybody in an email. I'm sure we can have that to you before close of business tomorrow.
Would you like to put this on hold or table this number 6 and wait?
I mean, I think I'd like to see it move forward at some level. I just want to know
What that level?
what the level is based on more
clarification.
information.
Yeah, it's agreed. Maybe we can have, maybe Sherry can come to whenever we discuss that.
That'd be a month, and that's gonna put us out of whack with Anthony's.
No,
training.
no, it wouldn't. We would
We have a
just,
public hearing
when
next
we
week.
prepare the language, we would fill in the number that, if it's 5,000 or 7,500, that it works out to be. But
Yeah.
again, just remember, they get room tax money.
Yeah.
This was intended to be a general fund surplus, so not a budgeted
Line
item
item.
either. So it's not necessarily something that has to be done before June 13th either.
Okay. Good
So it
point.
was more just a surplus direct infusion to help them.
It will be, I'm sorry.
Could she be present for Tuesday's meeting when we're talking about the budget?
Do we have a public
Tuesday,
hearing?
June 13th, you mean? Or?
Do we have
Next
another
week.
public hearing?
There is a public hearing.
So she could speak on it during
This Tuesday, right?
the public hearing.
Next Tuesday, yes.
This coming Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That'd be fast enough.
Yeah.
And as Anthony says, they are getting money, so it may not, from the new tax, room tax. And so I don't know how much that'll be when it comes out.
NMF.
There's a directed
The
number.
music festival might potentially be getting money from the new motel tax increase.
They're supposed to.
In the next
Yeah,
6 months?
It'll be over the year.
That would be more of a next year's, so maybe they don't need to ask us for any funding.
Oh, gotcha,
Because they
gotcha.
have this,
Extra
But if they're
revenue.
in the hole, we want to get them out of the hole.
yeah, that's what this would, anyway, my intent would be, yes, help them get out of,
Yeah, so that raises a question in my mind, because again, these are fiscal year 24 budget amendments that we're talking about here. But if you did want it to come forward as an appropriation in fiscal year 23, we could prepare it that way.
that's what I would like to, yes.
Okay, appropriation
surplus.
for 23. So.
Yeah, okay.
Good with that? Yes, please.
Thank you.
Next one is, in the capital fund ADA compliance, there has been a $300,000 line item, for, capital improvements related to, disability, compliance. I think that did not come forward this year, has not been included in the capital budget. And again, the question would be, do you want to add $300,000 or some number for that? And this would be in the capital fund. I think there would still be, right now, some of the sidewalk allocation that is for at least ADA compliance for the sidewalk ramps. But I think that'd be a fairly, a minor amount.
Yes, sir.
Would this be a potentially reoccurring or just?
It
one-
has
one
been
time?
reoccurring.
Would this 300,000 increase be a reoccurring or a one-time infusion, I guess?
Well, because it didn't get included in the budget right now, it would be a new $300,000, but it could be restated as a recurring 300,000.
Yeah, our ADA coordinator,
This started in 2018 when the council adopted our new ADA transition plan. And you might recall, there was a lot of ADA compliance issues in parks, sidewalks, buildings, way more than this. But this was the recurring amount that council said, let's do at least 300,000 a year and spread it amongst all of those. So we try to divide it up amongst park. We just did Lions Park, we're doing Andrews Park with all these park needs. We're doing a sidewalk on 24th Street. Sooner Theater has issues, Firehouse has issues. So this was your annual allocation, and we worked with our citizen committee to select which projects they think are needed. When we were preparing the capital budget, we didn't have an ADA coordinator. Malin was
Yep.
hired after that, so he just didn't know
Yeah.
to put it in.
And next year, the project we'll be doing actually received federal grant funding, so we're gonna be able to do a larger project. We've got CRISA funding to do Lindsay Street from 12th to 24th. So we need matching funds to be able to make sure to secure that. It's an 80-20 grant opportunity. And I believe we've got the full 500,000, which means we'll be able to complete that. Whereas before, we've had to do it in smaller phases and chunks. So this funding is important to be able to get that project completed also.
To be clear, that's on the east side.
Yes, I'm sorry, East.
East Lindsay.
How much would the match
Yes.
be?
Nothing particular about the
20%.
300, I think that was a compromise. We've got about 40 million in needs.
So 20%
So
of
it
it,
was just a number that
500,000
we all
so.
said, that's a reasonable thing that we can do and show the effort to get these facilities in compliance. It's really been a great program. Like Lions Park didn't have an accessible bathroom for 100 years. And now it's accessible. So, yeah, just important things like that.
They are.
The beauty of having a plan and projects lined up and actively budgeting and accomplishing those, in the event unscrupulous attorneys come to town and try to sue you over ADA compliance issues.
Well, I know
If you can
about
demonstrate the plan,
California auditors.
absolutely.
Auditors and
This
things.
is great coverage to let the world know we understand where our shortcomings are and we're working on it annually. And this is a sizable contribution. It keeps us in good standing.
I'd advise that we go on with it.
Yeah, could we do it from the general fund instead of delaying some other projects? Because I saw the question marks, general fund, existing capital fund, project delays. I don't think 300,000.
Out of
That
17
much of a
million, you wanna
dent.
do it that way?
But then the intent moving forward would be that it goes back into the capital
Capital.
improvements budget.
I think the proof that you're talking about, if we had to do with attorneys, this is a permanent part of our budget. We are definitely squirting this amount of money out each time as a planned thing, would be a better argument than we just put it in from the general fund as we have it. And then that way, when he's applying for that federal grant, it's written in there in a line, and they can check it, and it's, okay, you got the bucks.
Do we have to delay projects to get it done?
That's your call. I mean,
Yeah.
that-
Since we usually do budget for it in the capital budget, that's where it usually lives. And we'll make sure it lives there again in our next budget proposal. So, yeah, this one, would you stick the money, even if it came from general fund? Surplus, would you move over? I mean, it'd go to a capital account.
That's what I heard, at least Councilmember Grant say, was that in this fiscal year '24, it would come from a general fund subsidy.
Oh,
And then in
gotcha.
future
Sorry.
years, you would put it back into the
Into
capital
the
fund.
That's the way I
Yeah.
would
I didn't
understand
catch
it.
that.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, that kind of goes back to my question, because when I'm thinking about the general fund right now and the budget surplus, I'm always thinking about one-time projects or like one-time, even though we want to hire, because we have such staffing needs, I'm always thinking about a sidewalk project that's just one time or 1 year. So that would be my intent too, that this was general fund this year, because I do support this for sure, and then goes back, hopefully, next year, the capital fund is
Absolutely.
better off.
All good with that? Okay.
The next one was talked about by council at a previous meeting where you decided that you did not want to do the parking meter program downtown. So this would take about $35,000 out of the capital budget.
Oh. We can't get Cool Hand Luke down there with his pipe cutter and just walk them down?
No, they're not there.
Oh, they're not there.
There was a program to install them.
The new, put that Flowbird system out like we have on Campus Corner.
It's just a question. So we'll be asked about them again though, like the next budget cycle.
The plan, Sean may remember this, the plan was actually created by downtowners.
Right.
So when staff said, hey, we want to bring this conversation back, none of this was staff's cooking. This came from them, and then when they saw it as actually being ready to move forward, they changed their minds. So, which is okay.
I think there's also maybe new leadership coming to that too.
We saw kind of a reduction in the participation in the downtowners group. So there may be an effort for revitalization of the group. And these are things that make great conversations. If they had a business improvement district, they'd be able to debate those issues out in a structured format. And
So maybe we're not quite there, but
May
we
not be
could
ripe yet.
have some people by the next budget cycle who, can get behind it, because we've all been having the appropriate conversations in advance.
Yep, and we've got good cost, I mean, we know how to do it. We do it well on Campus Corner, and the Flowbird system seems to work very, very well. There were a bunch of old single parking meters, and those all have been removed. So I don't know
The
if we
county, just converted the county area into the Flowbird system.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think they're just, there's mixed feelings. I think there are some in the downtown who believe that we need to have a parking structure first and then you do the meters. That wasn't exactly what the study said, but I get it. There's just sensitivity, and that's fine. There's nothing sacred about this. It was just in the plan. We brought it forward, and it went over like a lead balloon.
I was just gonna say, yeah, in CPTC, the committee, I think, was unanimous that we didn't want to move it forward based off feedback I think we'd all received, and then the mindset we were thinking was, we've got several road projects going on in downtown Norman. There's lots of changes happening, and maybe they're not quite ready for that change, and potentially, ideally, I'd like to see downtowners or the downtowner business improvement district in the future, whatever it may be, come forward and say, hey, we're ready for the Main Street to be, have parking meters, and we're ready for you to go forward with that. Similar, like Campus Corner said, we want you to increase it, and we want you to expand the hours to Saturday until 9 p.m. And, when people ask about that, I'd say, hey, this is what the businesses asked us to do, was increase the rate and expand the hours, so we did. So ideally, I think that's kind of what we hoped would happen, or get some of these other projects all finished up.
And I do hear that maybe we're not having as great of connectivity with our business community sometimes, so it'd be really great to go forward on something like this with buy-in.
But that's why, Mayor, we didn't push that one forward.
Okay.
Usually things do make it out of committee, but that one was
Other way
5-0. We're like, ah.
Yeah, it's kind of how do you make the sauce? Anyway,
Okay, the next one is, the new transit center is coming online sometime in next fiscal year, and this is just to pay utilities, for the new transit center.
any
The Stephen T. Holman Transit Center.
Memorial Transit.
Memorial.
you gotta die first. All right.
He's really
That
taking
one was
one for the
easy.
team there.
If it doesn't work out well. And just because of the microtransit pilot program, we're, have a general fund subsidy towards the transit fund. So this would be just
Increasing that a
12,000
bit,
more of
yes.
that.
Yeah.
But potentially, if the microtransit, if the cost changes or we end up not doing it, then that, the transit fund will be back kind of on its own, or has been doing well other than this pilot program. The transit fund is covering its own expenses roughly.
And Sean, we stopped paying rent for the bus barn at OU,
Right.
but our hub that was still taking place by campus, we weren't paying for that.
Not really.
Connectivity.
We have a porta potty that we pay for, but
This will be better.
We can do that.
Yeah,
Permanent restrooms.
yeah, we just blew it. We should have put this in our budget submittal. We just overlooked it.
Number 10.
Okay, number 10 is, there's been significant council discussion about this $2 million ladder truck for the fire department. We have basically gotten direction that you wanted to move forward with that. There is enough fund balance in the public safety sales tax fund to pay for it in this year, this fiscal year. So we'd be okay, because we didn't put in the amount that PSST was originally going to have to pay for that program. We had talked about the difference in the costs, but we can absorb that if council wanted to move forward with that. It's just hard for me to say $2 million fire
Oh,
truck.
yeah.
Well, yeah, not, having just that weird bump in sales tax affected public safety sales tax, Norman Forward sales tax. And we were subsidizing PSST with the general fund primarily to make that debt service payment. And boy, in the last couple of years with good sales tax revenue, it didn't require that subsidy from the general fund, so fund balance kind of accumulated, which is not a bad thing.
No, but it seems to me, and this is just a statement more than anything, if we would be better off moving Fire Station 5 in from where its present location to Clear Bay or wherever we're gonna move that. Using that amount of money to be able to do that would get us substantially along the way to getting that project finished. That was a promise. I know we need good fire equipment and stuff like that, but we have one ladder truck that doesn't seem to be manned all the way, if I'm understanding all the manning things. And so, yeah, Chief isn't here. I wish I had him here to question. And I know it's an important thing, but so are the living conditions for those guys that are out at 5. It's deplorable. I wouldn't have put Seabees in those things. It just, go camp somewhere else. Things place is horrible. And to me, it just seems like it's not a bad allocation. There's nothing morally incorrect about doing it. It's just I would rather put it towards 5. So
How
that's
much
my
money do we
answer.
need?
I think we got a cost estimate about 7 million.
Yeah, it'd be between 6.5 on, we got pretty good indications from Stillwater. They're currently building a fire station, and I think this fire station will be a little bit smaller than theirs, but right now Stillwater's building one for about 10 million. This one would be about, from what I remember, about 5,000 square feet smaller. So we'd probably be in the $6.5 to $7 million range is what we just got a cost estimate on.
So,
The amount that was in PSST for Fire Station 5
That's
critical
what
capital
the
needs
assumption the
was
land is doing.
3.5 million.
Yeah, so
That's-
they,
But we know
Donated
it's gonna
land.
cost more than
That's
that.
not buying land.
Okay.
So there might be a land purchase.
so a couple thoughts. The RFP for the public safety analysis is out in the world. I think there are 17 firms that received a copy. And we had discussion about, okay, does it make a difference where Fire Station 5 relocates to if the turnpike happens? Do we need to know where the turnpike's gonna be before we figure out where to put Station 5? That would be the one responding most likely to anything east of that turnpike. And if there's an interchange to be built, how close do we need to be to the interchange? So that was one of the topics that we made sure we addressed in the RFP to say, you know, you consultants will need to take into consideration that we could have a turnpike and it could be west of the lake. And now there's conversation, it could be east of the lake. But that'll help give us some indication about where Fire Station 5 relocation needs to be. If staff recognizes that is a council priority, if it's your priority, it's our priority, and we can start figuring out the balance of that capital stack necessary to cover the cost of the relocation.
yeah, okay.
And my thought was Fire Station 3 seems to be a model that is good to build. It's not the world's fanciest, it's not all the glass and brass that the newer ones are. And we could get in there and have them have a comfortable place. The supervisor's down there, if you've never been there, a supervisor sits there and the TV's about where Stephen's briefcase is. And he's doing his work off his desk, or her, you know. The guys are sitting around watching TV and eating food, and he's, you know, there's no office. And that's not the only thing. Is if you have different genders of firefighter, they're staying together. That's just, nothing's going on, but it's just not right in there. It's not proper sanitation, not good water. It just needs to be fixed. It floods. It's just not good. And it just, to me, that seems like a trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that anybody disagrees with
Yeah.
what you're saying. I think we all want the voter-approved project to get done. I think right now it's just figuring out there's a huge funding gap in doing that, and I think we haven't gotten to the point where we know where the location is going to be. So I guess my question is, how long would it take the PSST fund to get to a fund balance where it could?
Right, the discussion has been that it would be, once the bonds have been paid off, for the first $1 million fire truck and the radio system in the EOC building, which is fiscal year '27. That's where we've been right now. But we also remember talked about when we were first discussing general fund surplus that you might want to consider a large project like this. Now, again, we thought it 3.5 million for Fire Station 5, but if you have $14 million, you might want to knock off that critical capital need in its entirety. And then the PSST fund will be in that position where you don't have any more critical capital needs to address.
So without, a little bit of crystal ball on Anthony's part. So right now, we would make 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, and 26, 27. 4 more years worth of debt service payments on that original PSST debt issuance. If we were to use general fund surplus and make those, pay it off early, how much interest would we save?
I'd have to calculate.
Yeah, I mean, pull a number out of your head. Would we save $750,000 in interest by, if you pay off that PSST loan early, all of a sudden you're $2 million ahead in the upcoming fiscal year. You're not waiting to 2027. So saving on interest payments is always a plus. That's just more money to put right into the program. If that were to happen during this upcoming fiscal year and you save some interest income, you get that RFP, get the information about where you're gonna build, whether or not a land acquisition is required to put it where
Right.
the study says we probably need to put it. And all of a sudden your cash position in PSST fund looks really, really good. Anthony, is it true that once the bond's paid off, those dollars just merge into general fund?
Yes.
Is that the trigger point?
Yes. So once all the critical capital needs are finished, and what I'm looking at here is there'd be, after you make the debt service payment in fiscal year '24, there'd be 6.885 million of principal left to be paid. So I suspect that you'd save about $800,000 of interest.
Half your letter
serious?
cut.
It's not nothing.
Well,
Start.
Yeah, getting close. So just another way to move those puzzle pieces?
Right
On
now,
top of
there's
it.
$9 million of debt service outstanding.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Have we explored other funding options for that fire station, outside funding sources? Because I don't know the details about that rural fire district thing that was approved, I don't know, last year or 2 years ago.
That
where
was a
rural
piece of
fire-
legislation that allows for the
Property-
formation
yeah.
of fire districts that are funded through ad valorem.
Yes, for rural fire districts. And even though that station is in the city limits of Norman, which isn't considered rural, I guess, even though most of our city limits is rural. To me, that station being in a rural area and serving a entirely rural population, maybe there's some way we
isn't
can
there a
tap into
definition
that.
they have to be volunteer in that?
Well,
Like
and I'm thinking
senior
about, some of those fire agencies with whom we have auto aid agreements, the Little Axe Fire Department.
Yeah, I think that operates very similar to an assessment district where the property owners have to petition the city. I know that was the case when the one was proposed in 10 Mile Flats to serve that area
Oh, I didn't know that.
that, is not exactly in Norman city limits, not exactly in Newcastle, but it would serve that area. And I know that was a proposal some years ago, but the property owners would have to petition the city.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Boy, anytime we can get some ad
But if
valorem to
there's-
help us.
I don't know if that's
That
just
would be
for
a huge plus.
operating one, but even that would help if we had ad valorem tax that paid for one of our fire stations to operate. But, so potentially that avenue, I don't know if there's any state or federal money for fire stations or fire relief,
The federal infrastructure package.
replacing
that-
old fire stations.
Yeah, we haven't seen those rules of engagement yet for any of that. They've been coming out in little spurts. There may be some money for bridges, there may be some money for other projects. Doesn't add up to what the federal appropriation was. So haven't been able to, we haven't seen anything yet that came across that says yes or no to that particular request.
So I'd like to get it done as fast as we can, just because it's, you know, a voter
We
approved
promised.
project.
Yep.
And I know we might have all heard, I know I've talked to some of the guys that work out there, and they have feelings about that.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that?
It's,
Yeah.
it's a little rough.
And why it hasn't been done yet. And I think I've done a good job of explaining to them that, well, there's a priority list, and we've been going down the checklist, and this is the last one, and
So with,
So
with,
on, but,
with your
you know.
permission, maybe to give us a little time to noodle on that specific challenges. We know we've got a ladder truck council's very much interested in. We know we've got Fire Station 5 voter approved. We're interested in that. If we look at existing PSST fund balance, existing general fund surplus, if you'll let us work on that for a couple days and put together a couple of alternatives that you may consider as the path forward that may allow you to accomplish the need in the time frame that kind of meets up with when you'll get the data back on your RFP. And we know the build time on the ladder truck it's a year build time
years.
Right.
plus, so.
right, there's, sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Well, my thing is, in taking from the general fund, I'm afraid about the water tax vote and our rate increase vote on water. And, you know, if we have to bail you out, basically, we have to do something. We have to have real money to be able to do that. There's no promises that go down the pike.
So, and, you know, we know that the ability to control the pennies left in the checkbook and the water fund go directly to how quickly does Chris tackle capital projects. And it's, you know, typically in the form of, we got a couple we really need to be proactive about, like that big water line getting out to the hospital. That's really one of those mission critical ones. In the event there were a catastrophic line failure and Chris's checkbook's empty, we would say that's a water line we gotta fix. You know, could the water fund pay the general fund back? Yes. That could be set up as a loan from the general fund to the water fund in the event of an emergency.
I didn't know that.
And then the people gotta, when you do that rate increase, now we gotta make debt service back to the general fund. That is a
Could it be
possibility.
zero interest?
Well, it'd be at portfolio interest rates, so it'd be
It
this.
has to have an interest.
Yeah, and so, yeah, it'd be a great interest rate, cause we don't make a killing on the portfolio.
We've been
But-
doing much better.
Yeah. We went for years at less than 1%, so, we're, you know, in the 3s.
4.25.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. But if we went out to the bond market, it would be similar. But that would be a mechanism in the event of a catastrophic line failure that Chris, he says he needs $2 million tomorrow, or, you know, a third of the community's without water. We would do that, set it up as a loan so that when a future rate increase happened, the general fund would recover it.
So in the PSST, the fire apparatus replacement, that was not a specific number of vehicles, it was just a budgeted amount to be
It was a
spent.
budgeted amount, yes.
And have we spent 6 million for vehicle fleet apparatus?
We've spent about 5.3 million, I believe. So
good
we
job.
have just under $1 million left. So whatever that math is.
So if we did the full 21 out of PSST, we'd be going over what voters had originally approved for that,
Well,
which
and
isn't
voters,
uncommon anyway, but yeah.
They didn't even approve a dollar amount. They just said an allocation. So
Of
there was
6
no
million,
dollar
okay.
amount, no quantity approved.
Okay.
Yeah, each year the fire department, fire chief has come forward with what he wants to do with that apparatus program. But what was approved by the voters was fire apparatus replacement.
And there was some budget for that, and we've, I think, got 6 or something like that vehicles since. Well, I mean, I don't know, the chief definitely seems to believe this vehicle's needed, so I do want to find a way to get it, but I also agree with the mayor too about Fire Station 5.
So the advantage of unfortunately a long build time on the apparatus and recognizing that you're not gonna build a fire station in one, fiscal year by the time you do design and you got your facility, and now we gotta figure out how to get utilities to it. You'll cover a couple of budget cycles there. So I think we can put together a couple of Gantt charts with what we think the draw schedule would be. You know, when do we need to pay how much for the truck? When do we need to pay how much for construction? And we may be able to span that solution over a couple of fiscal years and really put PSST in a good place and the general fund in a good place to be able to accomplish both those tasks. So it doesn't look like one massive punch to the budget. It'll be littler bites over a couple of fiscal years.
2 million's a big.
That's about it.
It sounds like a big bite. Apparently it isn't. You can buy a hamburger for that or something.
I didn't think we had that much in there though either. I thought we had like $1 million and we were gonna have to come up with another $1 million to buy this truck.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, I thought we had put in the million, but we had not. So it was not just the difference between the million and the 2 million. It was the whole.
Okay. Enchiladas.
Okay.
We'll bring that back to you and kind of show you what that would look like. Thank you, sir. But we appreciate your, just understanding where council's at and how you accommodate.
If we may, I would like for you all to discuss number 11 and number 14 together. These are all sidewalk projects requested by different council members. But just remember that there is a sidewalk program and a prioritized program for sidewalks that we're just, you know, within the capital allocation for sidewalks, trying to move down that list. This would change that list. And I'll turn to Scott or to Sean to talk about these individual project requests, but they have come forward with more final estimates on what those projects would cost and how it would, you know, kind of rejigger those priorities that are on the list.
Yeah, I'll ask Scott to get into the details with you. We've done a pretty thorough evaluation. We can actually throw up some slides if we need to. But in addition to what Anthony said, I also want to mention to you that we have been, a number of years ago, we developed a sidewalk list of requests. We get requests from you all. We get requests from citizens. I don't know how many are on that list, 60 or something.
Almost 50.
And then we have developed sort of a ranking system. It's a pretty thoughtful process that says if you were going to pick a sidewalk this year, we recommend you go to that ranking list and so 1, 2. So in the current sidewalk program that's currently in your budget for 24, you have selected number 1, 2, and number 4 priorities on the list. That's kind of the way we've been doing it. These projects are on the list. They're at various levels of rankings. Scott can get into that with you. And they're all great projects. We'd love to build more sidewalks every year, but this is a lot, and I think Councilor Holman probably knows more about the origin of some of these. Most of these were on our sidewalk ranking list already. Scott and his team went in and updated the numbers, and he can get into the details about each of these, or the one from Councilor Peacock down there on Rock Creek Road.
Certainly. So as we did, we put together the information and sent it to Councilmember Holman and also Councilmember Peacock. We went in, we did put each one of these into our ranking system to see where they came out, each one individually, and then did a cost estimate just so we could know where they were at. So I can go into, if you want to talk about each one individually, I can certainly do that. I've got some further information here.
I want to see the whole list.
I have a copy of the whole list. If we had a computer up, I actually have it that I could put on a present. I could pull it up.
This is the whole list I submitted. Is this right?
No, I want to see
She means the
the
entire-
ranking.
Oh, the whole city list, yeah.
I want to
yeah.
see the ranking list.
Okay, yeah, that would be good.
And like, where are 1, 2, and 4 projects that are currently allocated in this fiscal year's budget?
So I've got the information.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna move up here so you guys don't have to.
Yeah, you may be able to log in as you and get to it from that.
Last time I tried, I couldn't. You had to take it to
work
IT and have them plug it in and.
Yeah, I know Bryce had ordered a new power supply. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's back
Well,
up and
anyway.
running yet. It may not be.
But so in this fiscal year, so we have 5 sidewalk programs that are annual programs, and then we have the sidewalk horizontal saw cut that we do every year. That is not in this package. It's kind of a separate program because that's a separate vendor from where all these would be from. So just kind of give you an idea roughly of the numbers. The 50/50 sidewalk program is $100,000 per year. And we're blowing through that this year. That's almost gone. We're going to make it real close to the end of the year. We're happy about that. Sidewalk accessibility, which is ADA accessibility project. It's usually pretty small projects, $30,000. Sidewalks for schools and arterials projects is $80,000. Downtown area sidewalks was set up a long time ago to work through all the problems that we had down in the downtown area, $50,000. And then we have $120,000 in the sidewalks and trails projects. So just to kind of give you roughly, real quick, what those projects are for next year, what we have proposed for FYE '24. The sidewalk accessibility project, they're both on Boyd. There's two different intersections there on the north side, Boyd at College and Boyd at Elm. That one is not actually on the overall ranking sheet, but we've had so many complaints in that area, and it's not a large project as we would consider it for this list. And I do, if you want to, I can talk about where each one ranks too as we go, but that's the ranking list. So that's the sidewalk accessibility, which is the $30,000 program. The schools and arterials is Boyd Street from Berry Road to Flood Avenue on the south side, phase 1. We can't get all the way to Flood with that 100 and, sorry, it's a lot of them to remember every time I look at it for that $80,000.
Said Boyd to.
From Boyd, it's Boyd to Flood, phase 1. I think we'll get a little over halfway. We do have to,
On Berry, is that what you said?
I'm sorry, Boyd from Berry to Flood.
South side of the street.
I say that backwards every time because I think Berry and Boyd in
Got
my
it, okay.
brain. I apologize for that. But when we get to the east end of that, we actually have to cross Imhoff Creek, so we have to have a pedestrian bridge, so that increases that last section. That is number 4 on our ranking list. So that was one that was brought up. The north side of this, that goes a little bit, it doesn't quite go all the way to Flood, is number 5 on the list. And then when we go to our next program, the downtown sidewalks and curbs, we got 2 different locations, both north of Gray. The first one is over here on Webster, right next to our new building D. We postponed doing work in that section because of the work, and we didn't want it to be damaged and have to do more replacement. But there's some damaged curb that does not meet ADA, and we have a bus stop there. We need to get to that. And then also on Crawford, between the alley and Gray Street.
It's going on right now, isn't it?
No, that one's coming up, and that's
Repaving
south
right
of
now.
Gray, actually. But yeah, so that's the other project that we're looking at. And because those are the downtown programs, they're also not on the ranking sheet. They're just, because that's a very specific
Funded.
area that we're looking at, and it's a very different funding source. And then our sidewalks and trails projects are the number 1 and number 2 ranked projects on the list. And those are both 12 Avenue Northeast, north of Rock Creek Road, basically both sides, starting at Rock Creek and filling in the gaps until we get to the next sidewalks to the north. So that takes care of both of those. And that's number 1, 2, and 4. Number 3 on the list is Garver, back behind the Restore. There's an area back there that actually is ranking out at number 3, but it doesn't fit any of the categories of our, it basically go into the sidewalks and trails.
Sidewalk on the south side of the street?
It's actually on Garver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then, but it's on the south side of Garber, it's not on the north side where the liquor store, Restore.
I'd have to look at that project in more detail. I did not really research that one out fully because it's been on the list for a little while. But I'd have to go back and look at that one.
There's some nice little houses in there.
Yeah, there's an area back there, but that one's been requested. And just to kind of give you a little bit of information on how we do the ranking, because that's what a question we get a lot. We look at the street classification. So obviously an arterial street ranks higher than a local street. We also look at how, is it on a transit route or within a quarter mile of a transit route, if it's in proximity to a school. We also do a condition ranking. If it's in a 10, which is the worst case, it's 1 to 10, 1 being good, 10 being, then it gets a 10 if it's not even existing. We also rank if it's ADA compliant, if there's sidewalks on the other side. And then we do have a factor that goes in on the end based upon the age of the request and also the number of requests. So if we get, multiple requests, we add that in. So that's kind of how the ranking sheet is put together.
It's quite the algorithm.
And in fact, somewhere in there, there's actually a logarithmic function for one of the factors, and I think it's the time factor. But yeah, there's projects on the list that have been there since 2008. So And so we're giving them a little bit of credit for being there and because they've been requested for so long.
Did I interrupt?
No, go ahead.
Will, these are on the list and these are ready to get done someday, right?
Yeah, we
Someday,
just,
as soon as you can.
we look at what the funding source, how much funding we have, and sometimes like the Boyd Streets, yeah, I did it again. We sometimes have to break it down into multiple years to get it completed. For example, the accessibility project, we did a pretty long street. We worked on it for 5 years to get it completed. But now we're done with it. We're moving on to a new location. So that's our, happy to be done with that.
And Flood to Stubberman is gonna be high school kids going to Norman North from whatever those housing developments are down Flood, right?
That, and the request was actually to be able to get all the way over to Goddard, to be able to loop through,
Oh,
through North Base, to be able to get back to Robinson. Yeah.
Signalized intersection.
It's a signalized intersection. There is,
Aviation Academy.
we're currently working on the Legacy Trail extension on the west side of Flood from Robinson to Tecumseh. So there's a lot in that area. The major problem there is we have to get across the railroad. And we've got, how long have we been working on Brooks, trying to get that one completed with the railroad? And we've been working on that for years. And if I had to pick one that I wanted to push, it would be getting Brooks completed before I started trying to fight another battle with the BNSF. But it's a good project, no doubt. I mean, these are all, good projects.
What's your pleasure?
I'm,
He's fast.
So you're talking about like north, 12th Avenue, north of Rock Creek. We've heard a lot about like from High Meadows to Rock Creek. Is that on that list too? And are those ones you just mentioned, those are the ones that are being proposed to be funded in this year's budget, upcoming budget?
The ones that on the north side are they're the projects for,
The ones you mentioned,
For the
those
next
are in
fiscal
the
year.
budget. The Boyd,
Right.
Boyd Street. Okay.
yes, those are what we're proposing for next year's. In fact, we've actually begun advertisements so that we can be ready to bring that to you as quickly as we can after the fiscal year to be able to move forward and be able to get those done in the fiscal year. We always kind of hedge our bets a little bit there.
These are serving Sutton Wilderness parking lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of requests from folks to be able to get to Sutton Wilderness.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking of that section between High Meadows and Rock Creek. On the projects I have listed, they're kind of this would fulfill all the sidewalk gaps in Ward 7 that I know of. One of these projects is actually in Ward 1 though, and so I did mention that to Councilor Ball, and he was interested in that. I don't know if he wants to do that in his ward or not for sure, but he was interested in doing it. And that's the US Class and Highway 9 northeast side, which is $170,000. So that one's actually Ward 1. But it's in the same area as two other of these projects. And it would complete a sidewalk gap on Highway 77 Classen by Life Church, right across from the new On-Q. And so on the west side, there's a small gap that would be $20,000, which I have on here. On the east side, there's a little bit bigger gap, which is in Ward 1, that's the $170,000. So both of those would complete sidewalks all the way to Highway 9. And then there was one project I want to ask, because I didn't include it on here, because I thought it was already in the works, was sidewalk project for Classen from Brooks or Boyd down to Constitution.
That's an ongoing project that's in design, and they're trying to get
That
that one.
one's funded and it's in the pipeline, so that's why I didn't include that one. That's probably the biggest one I hear about all the time, but for the Ward 7 ones, like George Avenue, Lindsay, to Madison Elementary is an ADA project, or would be bringing up, there's a couple ramps, but there's also a couple drop-offs, and so that would create a ADA path to Madison Elementary from Lindsay Street. And that one ranks, that one's there's a west side project and an east side project. So The west side of George does not have a sidewalk at all. So on my priority list, I have ranked 1 through 5. That one would be 5 because there isn't a sidewalk there right now. There is a sidewalk on the east side of George Avenue from Lindsay to Madison. It's just not in great shape, and there are some non-compliant ADA.
We're talking this way, kind of great shape, the
It's
topography.
not. It's not in terrible shape. It's just a really old sidewalk, and it's a little bit narrow.
Oh, got
And
it.
it does have a couple intersections where there's not. It's a step instead of a ramp.
And there is an area there, if you think about coming north from Stinson, there's the 405 Burger Bar that's there.
Yeah.
The sidewalk there is the parking lot. And then there's a commercial that I believe is an OU structure, I'm not positive. But there is no sidewalk. We'd actually have to remove some curbing, extend some sidewalk out. And then there are some ramp items but there has been some work in that area where OU I believe they own those apartments that are just north of that. And they have gone in and done some work on the ramps in that area. So this project was basically, we thought that some of that sidewalk would have to be repaired and replaced, but not replace all of it. Build the necessary ramps, which were counted and included individually, and then do that work through that commercial zone there north of Stinson on the east side. And the west side was full construction, including some curb and gutter that's missing along the intramural fields for OU.
Yeah. So that would be third on my priority list out of the 5. And my number 1 would be the College Avenue, Lindsay to Hoover. It's $56,000. It's a major route for the fraternity and sorority crowd. They don't actually use Elm or Chautauqua very often. They use College to cross Lindsay. And I lived on that block for a long time, and I never wanted to put that project forward while I lived on the street. I didn't want to look weird, so now that I don't live on that street anymore, it's a very small, half the block doesn't have a sidewalk in it. So it'd be filling that half of a block gap. And then my second project was on Classen, right by the On-Q, just north of it, which is a $20,000 project, $21,000 I should say. That was my number 2. So those 2 are low budget ones is why I picked them.
Would it help you to work with Mr. Sturts and add to his ranking priorities so that you can get your rankings in there?
He gave me the
We've done
rankings.
that.
You got that, okay.
They're in the, we put them in the spreadsheet and ranked them.
Yes. And so I've got those rankings, but yeah, and my own priority of which ones I would prefer and which ones I'd be willing to forego.
Wonderful, that's how it ought to work.
Mayor, if I may, I want to mention, there's a air quality grant program that we've been watching really close coming out of ACOG with lots of money, and it's coming out, and we got the notice recently. And Scott, is it open or the deadline is September?
We're hoping that it's going to be August.
Anyway, one of the highly touted elements of that are sidewalks, getting people out of cars and off and not having emissions.
That's, okay.
So right now, we're playing with all kinds of different project grant ideas, but sidewalks is kind of number 1 on our list. And if it's helpful, maybe some of these would fit into that. That would be a 100% federal grant, and the money would come available in FY '24. Can't guarantee anything, we're working on that, and if you wanted to budget it, maybe in the normal budget on the basis that maybe we get lucky and get a grant for it in the same year, we can play the odds.
Well, what I'd maybe like to do is use general fund surplus on these 2 that are $20,000 and $56,000. And then the 3 other projects in Ward 7 and the one that's in Ward 1, maybe include those in that attempt. And if not, I can request them again next year or whenever. So that's what I would recommend maybe.
So I really respect Councilmember Horn for advocating for sidewalks in his ward.
Comma.
But some of these are, especially the ones on 77 are 43, 44, and 45 out of a 46 choices on the list. And I think, like we've considered fleet replacement, right, and getting a larger chunk out of the top budgeted, or the top priorities based on this ranking, like, I would like to see if we're gonna, like, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to like having those lower item ones, dollar ones from Ward 7, but, you know, there are a bunch from, you know, other wards that are, like, the highest one from Ward 7 is ranked 19.
I would definitely encourage other council members to submit
Sure. No,
amendments if they want.
no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to think of, like, sidewalks have been an issue in the last several budget cycles, and we've had kind of some ad hoc requests from council members to get, you know, new sidewalks or gaps in sidewalks kind of filled. And so if it's a continuing priority of council, which I think that it seems like it is, that maybe we start allocating more money to the sidewalk program so that we can start taking larger chunks out of these higher ranked projects. So, you know, I'd be okay with, especially hearing about the grant funding from ACOG, like there might be some larger opportunity. So I guess I want to hear about all of the opportunities that we might, so that we can take larger chunks out of these lists, as opposed to just going the piecemeal, kind of like, oh, I'm advocating for this sidewalk in my ward. But could we think about it as a whole city kind of project?
All of those are very, you know, very good. You know, remember that you did the McKinley School approaches one year, and that was moving down the list. So again, it's just what you want to do. It's,
Right.
Councilmember Foreman's sidewalk last year.
Yeah.
Councilmember Studley's brand new sidewalk.
Which is why I'm saying, like, we're starting to see that these are continual priorities of council, especially to fill those sidewalk gaps. And I think that it is a conversation that we're hearing in our visioning, right? Walkability, thinking about connectivity in a multimodal way. Like, I think that even with strong towns, right, thinking about how we connect people that is not via car. So I would like to see us put more money into these projects across the city. But like I said, I know just because Councilmember Holman is really good advocate for his ward. So I don't want to diminish that.
Well, I think about I think about the cost of them too. So like the top priorities might cost 10 times more than
Every
Number
minute
40
we go down
priority.
the road, it costs more.
Yeah.
So, yes, ma'am.
Agreed, and also it'd be a
Oh, yeah.
very beneficial thing moving forward, because it increases place attachment and the list of beneficial things, and it is such low hanging fruit. That's what makes people happy, honestly, is good sidewalks.
And council can even, you know, say, schools kind of characteristic sidewalk gaps, and it just gives us a little more, us knowing exactly the direction you want to go makes our life so much easier when we bring you those recommendations, and we understand the value in those gaps that do get kids to schools dry. You know,
And a lot of them on here are that school sidewalk, arterial roads program. So like, it seems like a majority of people really are focused in and around like walkability to their local schools.
Yeah, and speaking of piecemeal approaches, I know Community Development Block Grant has filled in patches near schools that the Google Earth shows a beaten path.
Yep.
Where the kids are walking, but it's not just the kids, it's people in the neighborhoods too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is what this is based off of too, is just desire paths I've seen in Ward 7. Just literally just going on the satellite view, seeing where is there a sidewalk gap in here? Where have I been seeing people walking in the grass and stuff? And then looking at when I got the information from staff about the price of the estimated cost of them, and so that's how I kind of did my ranking on that. So, like with the George Avenue being a connected to Madison situation, and then the Highway 77 ones just being because we've seen a lot of recent development, like the On-Q and more stuff coming in down there.
That's where the jail guys go when they get out of jail and they're headed towards town. They're walking on that bank.
Well, that one is another one. I'm referring to the On-Q on Highway 9.
Classen.
Classen towards Noble. But that's another one that's up there north of that on Q is a missing sidewalk gap too. But this one, there's just been a lot of new development in southeast Norman down by Highway 9. And there's just a couple missing gaps, which is what these are. So that's why, like I said, my top three would be the two low-cost ones, and then the third one would be that George Avenue East Side because it's a school-related one. But if anything, like I said, I'd like to do the College Avenue and the $20,000 Classen one for out of general fund surplus, and then look at the other ones potentially with that other program, for sure.
Yeah, and I think I'm fine with that. I think just the whole scope of like $780,000 in Ward 7 was a
again,
lot.
In Ward 7, it's actually 609,000.
Sort,
but
and then the one in Ward
the
1.
one in Ward 1, which Austin, like, because I said it's related to these Classen ones, and would be fill the last sidewalk gap on that side of Classen. So
Yeah.
that would be.
But I think that's a fair way to approach it, right? Like getting the, kind of the ones that you've ranked as your top two, which are the lower cost ones, and then putting forward packages and kind of proposals to this grant funding that we could get for 100% federal funding.
It's 80/20, I
80/20,
believe.
okay.
So we would have to make sure that we had some funding availability that we could
So-
have those match funds.
How much would you propose that we allocate to that?
I mean, if you just took, I think we need to sit down and probably do a little bit of evaluation on what we felt were another source that we use for where we think that is important to fill in, because it's very well documented as we go back to our comprehensive transportation plan. And we have a sidewalk gap map in there, which is woefully out of date. It's amazing when I look at that and how much we've completed, and I'm so happy. And then I look at how much more we got to go. But, if you start with that, that's something you can go with a documented approach that makes it look very good when you're going for a grant proposal, and we can mix in some of these. So I think that we just need to look at it from that standpoint and approach it and what we think would be a viable program and what we think that magic number might be to make us highly competitive for that grant.
So to help Anthony and, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was probably just gonna say the same thing that you were
To
gonna
help
say.
Yes.
Anthony in his decision,
Yeah.
What I heard a consensus of was to move forward with 11B, 11C, and 11E,
check.
and then some lump sum of money. And I'm assuming you wanted that to come from the general fund. 11B, 11C, and 11E, and then some lump sum of money for additional sidewalk programs.
To go towards this grant
Yeah.
opportunity.
I mean, the most expensive on here is $479.
Are we also talking about
Some are in the
14
100
with
to
this
200.
list still
We've kind of
We-
bounced off
we-
it a couple of times, but it seems.
It's
to
on
not-
there too, yes.
But I also, just to clarify, so one of my concerns
it
about
ranked?
the priority list is like, do
I
small
don't
little gaps like on College Street, do those not rank as high because they're so small
The-
and
the
compared
link-
to these big, like,
The length of it doesn't really affect it, so it's not a size issue. It's more, is it near those attractive zones? Is it near a school? Is it near a transit route? It's those type of items that really get it. And then what kind of a street is it along? We need to
Arterial
take care of our
residential.
arterials first and then
Right.
back down as we go down from arterial roads.
the George Avenue west side, which again is the side that doesn't have a sidewalk currently. I'm for it getting one eventually, but that one's the most expensive at $234,000 in Ward 7, but it ranks 19th. But then the George Avenue east side, which does have a sidewalk already, but would just need to be fixed up, is 119,000. It ranks 20th. I mean, the 19 and 20, they're right next to each other, but it's
Well,
interesting.
and
though, how-
their scores are actually the exact same.
yeah, so I
They're
was thinking they're probably tied for-
79.74.
Tied for
So
19, 20. yeah.
they're just put in there at that point where really it's not and then I believe that all of them on US 77 are actually the exact same score or just off each
Part
other.
of me is like, with funding, even though they might not rank as high, we could knock out a bunch of the small, the $20,000 one, a $50,000 one. Or do we save up and do fewer ones, but we do the bigger ones? So, yeah, I'm definitely for adding more funding to do the general list there.
No, I think
Yeah.
that to be competitive in that program, I think that we want to start by looking at gap projects, larger gap I think that's what's going to get us more competitive.
Yeah.
But I've got to admit, I have not read the NOFO myself, so the Notice of Funding Opportunity. So I don't want to claim to be the expert in what the criteria are, because I would be woefully wrong if I tried to do that.
Do you remember off the top of your head what we're paying about per square foot for sidewalk?
So just for the concrete, it's like, I think we're up to about $56 or $60 a square yard. I'm sorry, it's
Oh,
a square
yard,
yard,
okay.
which is how we actually measure it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take into account removal or sidewalk prep or any of the others.
General.
And then we wind up looking into, the ramps are becoming more and more expensive because of the.
Manual labor.
It's all manual, and you got to put it, and then we charge separately for the tactile warning that goes down. We also try to look at, so the east side of 77 north of Highway 9, that project, we actually have to cross the off-ramp from Highway 9. So we have to have that signalized for pedestrian safety. And then we were taking it across the street to OnQ, and that has to have pedestrian signals and pedestrian poles also.
That's another $100,000.
So that's $100,000 on that project.
Wow.
So, you know, we're always looking at what we have to do to make sure it's a safe and viable route.
Third, 20.
Well, thank you for doing that.
26.
Mayor, I'm gonna suggest, just for, I mean, this is kind of random, but I think $1 million grant application is likely,
Okay.
easily. So a couple $100,000 in city contribution for now. And
We'll
we'll
beat that
200,000,
20%.
that
I
would be.
know it sounds like a lot, but we just don't know.
But
But it will not take long to get $2 million in sidewalk or other.
500,000 just
clean
in
air
the sidewalk.
That'd be
applications.
But
Yeah.
Get some of
it's
these.
worth it. I mean, keeping kids off the street when they're walking home from school
Agreed.
seems to me a common sense.
And people love sidewalks, as she mentioned earlier.
Exercise.
Quality of life.
And now, down to 14, since we included that in the thing. What is the ranking for?
30.
It's what?
30th.
30th.
That's right.
But that was a kid one as well, right? It was near Norman North.
I don't know how many, it seems like most high school kids drive anymore. When I was in school, you walked. But
They do, and as an, Councilmember Peacock isn't here, but
To
he made,
advocate for
but he made a request of, would there be a portion we could do that would be a smaller portion that would help out? When you get to Stubman, there's that little industrial commercial on the north side of the road, just west of Stubman, and there's a gap there that's 140 foot long.
Yeah.
And that would be about a $20,000 project to fill that gap in, along with making it all ADA compliant. And that would give you a consistent sidewalk all the way from Trailwoods Drive, which takes you into the neighborhoods, all the way now to Porter. And also tie it all back in where you could cross Stubman there at the light to get to the high school. And then we could work on trying to get the railroad to get out and put road panels in, and then we could come up with funding in a future year to do the remainder of it.
And
Sounds fair.
that railroad connectivity we just experienced very successfully on
Constitution.
Constitution.
But
And
that
oh my
was-
gosh, what a major improvement that is.
Oh, I hadn't seen that.
And this has been on Councilmember Holman's radar for a long, long time. And when you recognize there was nothing on that side of the road, and the number of wheelchairs and motorized wheelchairs and scooters that were trying to make their way over the tracks was really, I don't know how many of them, they live close by, but it was really getting dicey. And the improvements, we know exactly what it cost, we know what the timeline looks like once the guys at BNSF say, we'll do our share if you do your share.
Well, that's very generous of them. It's a pretty specialized panel.
Yeah.
Well, it's a typical road panel that they utilize, the same as what they use for the road crossing. But because it's not attached to it directly, you have to get off of the railroad, so they have to put it in another panel. And in some instances, they say to do that, we have to replace all the panels across the roadway. So we're going to charge you $80,000 to do this. And that's when I call my good friend Rick Knighton and say, Rick, what was that state statute that says they're responsible for putting the sidewalk across? And then I send them that reminder that it's your responsibility. And then that's usually where we start having problems.
It's always
But-
nice to have a hammer in the negotiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
On that Rock Creek one, I do see that gap at Stubman, just
Yes.
to the west, on the north side of the road. And then there's another small gap.
I do have photos
Okay.
here
Yeah, I
of
see
it.
the other.
Just, we prepared these. I thought we may be able to pull it up, or I would have brought more copies.
There's like two small gaps, one on the north, well, two on the north, and then one on the south. In front of the ABC Supply Co. Looks like there's a
Yeah.
gap right there. And then from 12th to the flood, there's no sidewalk at all, except in front of Mickey's garage,
Yeah.
which I remember that whole ordeal a few years ago about the width of Rock Creek Road and
Yeah.
the sidewalk. And
We were remembering all that as we were
Before I was
discussing
in council, but I was
this
there.
also.
I watched it. It was with the WQPZs, and it was one
Yep,
of the first.
yes, it was.
ones, so yeah, I guess I'd be interested in more information on.
What I heard was
Sidewalk.
about $20,000 to do the,
Yeah.
The gap that gets you
To do-
closest to the residential.
Yeah.
To fill in the gap that would at least get you to all of the residential on the north side of the road.
Yeah. Yeah, the rest is all industrial. so- Yeah, I'd be for that too.
Did you guys see this?
Excellent.
Yes.
And again, I kind of spoke for Councilmember Peacock there, and hope I didn't overstep my.
yeah, just remember that, of course,
Committee
he can make an
consensus anyway.
amendment from the floor if he wanted to try to do the, 82,000, but what I heard of a consensus of this committee was about $20,000 from the general fund for the piece that
Yes.
fills in the immediate gap and doesn't mess with BNSF.
Yes.
Okay.
So I need to clarify too, are we adding amendments for the ACOG grant, 20% match? Sean suggested 200,000, and then are we also adding additional funding to the sidewalk program itself?
I think just the 200,000.
Yeah.
I heard just the 200,000.
Yeah,
'Cause
and maybe we'll
that's a lot of
consider
money.
more money in the programs in the future, but we've got this opportunity for funding. Yeah,
Should be like this.
good clarifications.
Here's a Dr. Fund thing. Number 12.
On number 12, you'll be receiving reduced appropriation item during this fiscal year. We talked about this, remember, to the cash flow problems in the Norman Forward Fund. So we would reduce the appropriations in '23. This would be an amendment in '24 to put that appropriation back in for Griffin Park. And want to make sure that everybody's clear on that. A similar thing in number 13, this is in the Water Reclamation Fund. We would reduce about $533,000 of the estimated revenue in the Water Reclamation Fund. This basically gets it closer. Chris left it.
He's chickened out.
But basically to get the estimated revenue closer to reality, if you will. And we bring that one forward unless you object.
Any objections? Please do.
We prefer to live with budget accuracy wherever possible.
Yeah.
15.
Okay, so finally, number 15 comes from Councilmember Peacock, and this is just a $75,000 mural program. I have seen the Plaza Walls deal in Oklahoma City. Basically, he thinks that there might be some matching money from the Norman Arts Council, but basically a similar program to that.
When we look at the Norman Arts Council and the amount of money that we're getting from the increased room tax money, and then he's wanting to add more to that. I'm 100% with murals. I think that's cool stuff that happens, and it makes the town more fun to be. Same with public art. But since they're going to get money, if he's got it down here for 5 years, I can see a 1-year shot and get them over, and then they've got tax that they're coming in with, and they can keep on with the program. My personal suggestion was, would it be half of that amount? I always go to half, I don't know why. It would be 50,000 instead, and 1 year as a deal.
And just, I think conversations had taken place with the Norman Arts Council, and I think murals were in their mind and the way they were kind of envisioning the first go around with the new hotel bed tax revenue coming in is that they would allocate a match of their new revenue just for murals with any contribution the city wanted to make towards the mural piece. So if you put in 50, they put in 50. And I don't know what murals cost, but that would be 100,000 available for murals.
About $50 to $75 a square foot.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
If you need scaffolding and you gotta pay the artists and
Pretty
also
Paint
the,
and
yeah.
Artists gotta eat too, I guess.
Yeah, we're in the wrong line of work. So, yeah, I think whatever council puts in on that line, I think you'll see a similar contribution. And over time, as their revenue on the hotel bed tax thing, we anticipate growing, over time, hopefully significantly in the SEC and room rates going up, that program could become self-sustaining solely out of hotel bed tax in the future.
What's your pleasure?
Well, I was going to talk about, Councilmember Peacock and I have talked about this a little bit too, because some of my concerns were with the way that the funding potentially gets spent. So just thinking about when people apply for, this money or to create a mural on their property, I want to make sure that we're thinking about where we're focusing, that we're spreading it around, that it's not just, potentially private property owners that could pay for a mural, but maybe it's, nonprofits or other people that might not have the cash flow to create this. So just in the intent of what the program looks like is to create equitable access to putting mural and art in public spaces.
So this could come potentially with a request to council saying, we'll put up X dollars, but what we'd love to see is policy language, just to make sure all those boxes are checked. Yes, it could be available for private property. Yes, it could be available for public property. Yes, it could be available for nonprofits, and kind of let council lay out that, what you hope to see, just to make sure it's not all in one neighborhood getting all the projects.
Well, and I agree, because we use it downtown. I see a lot of photographs of the one that's down there by Dr. Bird's office.
Yeah. Welcome to
And
downtown.
that's wonderful. It's a nice looking mural. And I just think there are a lot of spaces that could be, small spaces, that could be used for an odd attention getter. That's not necessarily huge art or anything else, but it's maybe the size of this table or something.
Yeah,
And so-
the Dr. Bird one was totally privately funded.
Was it?
And I know that the Norman Arts Council gives kind of professional guidance, maybe artist selection.
Yeah.
But I would defer to the city attorney about public funds on private property. That's a
Yeah.
bridge to
That's where
cross.
we'll have to be careful with the policy. I also want to point out that under our sign code, murals are they actually meet the definition of signs, which is a little weird. So that's something we've got on our list to work on as well. This came up, I think, initially at a committee level, and so we're doing some research on that.
When we painted all those water wells,
Artful inlets.
Artful inlets.
yeah, and I didn't.
That's
realize-
public property though. I mean,
Yeah.
Public right away.
The council adopted that policy. Mayor knows that we really worked on that with Norman Arts
Wait,
Council.
could you put a
That was
mural on the
kind of
water tower?
exclusive
Yes.
Policy for that.
A lot of cities do.
Mm-hmm.
There's the one in Oklahoma City that looks like a smiley. It's in South.
So we'll require maybe some adjustments to
Looks
the
like a
sign
balloon.
ordinance.
Hot air balloon.
Which our sign
Yeah.
ordinance is due for.
Like it looks, it's like
overhaul
red,
anyway,
blue,
because
yellow,
it's
green.
constitutional law
So you
is
should
that.
put a mural on it.
So that's on our list.
Yes, ma'am.
So just thinking about how much money, if it's a match amount from Norman Arts Council with whatever we put into it. So saying it's 75 and that's 150,000, how many murals do we think that would fund based on the cost estimate that you said per square foot?
Plus the size.
That's what I'm just trying to understand, what is it, what does this get us?
Yeah, it's 1,000 square feet, and the other problem is finding public property to do it on.
1,000 square feet doesn't sound
Wait.
that big, does it?
Is that
And I will say that's on the high end after because there is oversight costs with Norman Art Council and everything that goes along with it. And you have to think the artist has to sketch it out, has to get approved, and he has to buy the paint,
Yeah.
has to buy scaffolding. It's expensive.
Well, having a daughter that is an artist, I like her to be fed,
Yeah.
not by me. And,
Yeah, so I think the 75,000 feels right based on the actual cost and based on a match grant. I guess where, 5 years, that seems a little long to me, but,
you wanna do it year by year?
I mean,
You wanna do 2 years to get
I would
it?
like to see the program exist first before we commit to 5, because
right,
A
we
pilot.
got the vote approved, but
so
we
a
haven't
pilot
actually,
for,
there isn't actually a
23,
real
24
program
fiscal.
yet, or there is, but not, I don't know.
well, I'm just wondering too, like, how soon are we going to be able to realize murals? Like, are they gonna be able to be done in a calendar year? And so,
Yeah.
but if it gets it off the ground, so like maybe it is a 2-year to give us kind of some lead time and run to see how it's going, and then,
So you're
yeah,
saying 75, 1 year,
2 years.
75, 2 years.
Yeah, my.
From the general fund, I'm asking. Is that,
It would have to be from the
Yeah.
general fund.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, my only apprehension about the 5 years was that like $75,000, that's like a city staff position. And
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
anything that we're funding more than 1 year is making me think a little, twice about it. So,
'Cause we could use
like I said,
cops and
thinking
fire.
about one-time projects, one-time
We could
cost.
use planners. And
So,
public
something I
works.
do support for sure, and I'm fine with 75,000, but yeah, 5 years, that could be a staff position potentially.
I'm supportive of it being 2 years, and also there's a potential for some corporate buy-in, because when you look at Plaza Walls, you have Google and other companies also sponsoring, so that's why you have like 6 murals back there.
Yeah.
Also, just out of curiosity, because I was joking with Councilmember Holman, is that water tower ours, the one that he wants to paint?
Lindsay
So
Yard?
you could literally put a mural on it.
Yeah.
Okay,
We were
just curious.
gonna put like City
Well,
of Norman logo and
yeah, I
Bellevue on the other
didn't, I
side.
didn't think there was a mural on it. I thought it was just,
But it could, we
But
could,
it-
we could do whatever we want with it.
I mean, other cities do
Would you
murals
take the
on their
meeting
water
from now?
towers.
We're just gonna go on to item 2.
And I saw a cool, in the city of Tulare, they have a water tower, and it's in the downtown, and the mural was, since it's the dairy capital of the world, they turned the water tower into a giant glass of milk, and there's a giant straw sticking out of it, and it's.
That's
Oh, we could get real creative
on,
with that.
man.
I would caution everybody.
one
about
person's
the
cool is
water-
another
water
person's
tower
crap.
costs Are way high. Was 600,000
Yeah.
to paint it white.
Right.
Okay, so when you're
Yes.
talking about an
We would-
artist doing that, you're probably talking in excess of $1 million.
Okay, well, good to know. It is
Good
a
to
thought.
know.
But it is, yeah,
Giant canvas.
historic, and we gotta paint it
We will
something.
proceed in that manner.
Okay.
Appreciate that direction.
All right, so item number 2.
I heard 75,000 for 2 years.
Yep.
2 years.
General
Yes.
fund. Okay.
Surplus.
Okay, item number 2 is a discussion regarding the monthly revenue and expenditure reports.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add unless you have questions. You saw the revenue from this month was flat, but again, flat is good, so, you know.
I saw that we were the number 1 last month in sales tax, and this month we're last.
Yep. And so this is 2 months ago at the store.
This is March.
Yep.
March.
March 31st is when the last day of.
So hopefully our April numbers will look pretty good with all the.
Events.
Yeah, gearing up towards graduation too, so we should finish strong.
We're comparing graduation last year to graduation this year, so.
Any other Bed Bath and Beyond news or?
Nothing like that.
I know Tuesday
knock on
morning's
wood,
closing,
and-
but that's
yeah.
another nationwide thing again.
And they were brand new, so they didn't stick
Tuesday
around
morning.
long, yeah.
Yeah, so, no other ones you've heard about or anything around the closings or national chains closing? Okay, any other trends or anything we should know about?
Not to my knowledge. You know, the retail sales number nationally was revised downward a bit, but it was way better than what they thought it was going to be, so.
We're probably 6 months out
from beginning to see school bond approval dollars being spent. But it won't be long during
That'll be in a
the
few.
upcoming fiscal year, some of those dollars will begin to make their way out into the local economy.
Do you think construction at OU, does that, I don't know if
It-
they're
it-
buying materials in Norman or what?
You would assume they're being delivered in Norman.
Yeah, so we should get use tax. And if that's,
Thank you, sir.
you're gonna buy concrete locally, you're gonna buy asphalt locally, you're gonna buy as much steel as you can if it's rebar and that type of material. And of course, yeah, they're eyeball deep in Patty Gass's facility. I'm still amazed at how deep the hole was
Good going.
for the
When
softball
they're
stadium. The
gonna
hole had to
tear
be
it down,
30
when
feet
they're not
deep.
gonna start
It's
construction.
amazing. I don't know what's down there, but they
Water.
started out
As soon as they-
really low. A lot of concrete and steel sticking up now.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that works with our street realignment
Yep.
project too, because I'm like,
They took it into consideration for the big sweeping S curve and the roundabout right in the middle of Jenkins. So,
Anyway, you ready for item 2?
done with that too.
That is
Oh,
item
good.
They're just that efficient.
Well, thanks. I've just got one question, and I know you've explained this to me, and it just doesn't quite settle in my mind. When we look at our comparison, very last page comparison to sales tax in other places, ours always seems to lag, but we had a conversation about it, and it seems to be the size of the economy in the place that we're comparing to.
How much movement moves a percentage point, okay? And you gotta have a whole lot of sales to move Oklahoma City. You gotta have a whole lot of sales to move Norman. You don't have to have so much sales to move Midwest City.
Gotcha.
So,
And that's what makes them more volatile.
Yeah.
And us kind of heading above, almost above.
yeah,
we were
Flat.
above them like we were the number one like every month last year, 10 months out of the 12.
and you're comparing
That
to
put us
that.
up on that new plateau, which is why flat is good. We're still
Yeah.
on the plateau.
But it is interesting, like I was mentioning, how we were, in last month, we were the top sales tax, and this month we're the last.
Yep.
And I
So
don't know.
February, we were the best in the metro, and then March, for some reason, we're last.
All right.
It works out.
Anything else from council or staff? We're adjourned.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.